Chapter 836. Still need to practice. It had been a long time since Tang Ru was put in such a difficult state. Within her short experience in glory, she had only felt this powerless when she fought against Yi Shu in the beginning and when she had gone up against Wang Jiaxi, who had once invited her to join Team Tiny Herb. However, Tang Ru clearly knew that those two people were far more skilled than her. Her skill level had been low at that time too. Fighting against them was like Tang Ru bullying a normal player. Until now, as Tang Ru improved and accumulated experience, she thought she wouldn't be as powerless as before if she fought against the two gods again. But now, this player from Team Everlasting who she didn't even know the name of and was toyed around by Wei Chen in the last match, which resulted in Wei Chen laughing at for half an hour, was able to suppress her. Completely suppressed. It was like facing Yi Shu's unspecialized, or Wang Jiaxi's magician in the beginning. Tang Ru felt powerless. Of course, Tang Ru knew the Warlock class was strong at controlling. But if her opponent's class was the only reason she was being beaten up so badly, wouldn't this make the Warlock unrivaled? In the professional circle, there were various classes that could oppose Warlocks, including the battle mage she was using. Wouldn't this mean that everyone would have no power to retaliate when facing a Warlock? Of course it wasn't. She needed to find the reason on herself. The reason was because she didn't fight well in the beginning, which caused her to fall into the opponent's pace. Tang Ru was no longer the rookie from before. She had learned to analyze the problems in her matches, and she was pretty accurate in her analysis. But even if she felt regretful, she couldn't return to the moment from before. She needed to face her current situation. But after she was drenched with chaotic rain, she could only watch helplessly. Her equipment played as a factor in this. The characters in top pro teams would pay a lot of attention to their resistance against abnormal statuses. If they were going against classes like a Warlock, they would definitely adjust their equipments accordingly. Team Happy didn't have such conditions, so Soft Mist's resistance was mediocre. When she faced the Warlock, the skills were already enough to affect her greatly. Now that she was under an abnormal status effect, she was unable to resolve the situation for the time being. For example, when one was facing class based on physical damage, then one would need physical defense. When one was facing class based on magical damage, then one would naturally need magical defense. Similarly, when one faced a Warlock, an abnormal status resistance, which was affected by spirit, was important. Soft Mist didn't take any precise and directed actions, so part of this played as a reason for her difficult situation. This was why Warlocks used to be thought of as an op class that broke the balance in the game. But as more people paid attention to their resistance towards abnormal statuses, many players understood that every class simply had their own advantages and could mutually restrain one another. Tang Ru wasn't able to think so much at the moment, so she could only find the reasons from herself. When the confusion status effect finally seemed to come to an end, Leopold had already prepared another control skill in advance. After Soft Mist was trapped by a binding curse, another dark, murky wave arrived. The spectator chat became increasingly lively. Between the two characters, one character's health line dropped at a rapid pace, while the other character's health didn't move a fraction. The face slappers no longer held any reservations or restraints. Some people even started to call out for their companions. A satisfying face-slapping circumstance like this was too good to miss. The Warlock player from Team Everlasting was also immensely excited. This week's preparation was timely indeed. The feeling of having everything under his control was great. The more the Warlock player played, the smoother he played. His mind was clear, his technical skill was nimble, and his ability to grasp opportunities was accurate. Among all of this, it felt as if his breathing and heartbeat became one. At that moment, he felt as if he was Leopold, as if he was standing under Red Flower Pavilion while he casted his dark curse. Under the opponent's excellent performance, Tang Ru wasn't able to turn the tables around. Leopold achieved a perfect victory. When Soft Mist fell, what the cheering in the audience's channel was like goes without saying. The spectators that came to face slap immediately took over the channel. They were even able to best the fans of Team Everlasting. All sorts of in-the-face insults and taunts like the east wind blows, the battle drum sounds, who should Soft Mist fear, started to overflow the channel. As for Happy, the atmosphere there was quite nervous. Everyone had experienced Tang Ru's eagerness to win. Now that the opponents had gotten a perfect victory out of her, how much mental damage did she take? It was obvious that Tang Ru wouldn't have a smile on her face. It was as if the word gloomy was written on her face. The way she pushed the keyboard back and let go of the mouse showed her unwillingness. Chen Guo walked over in attempt of comforting her. But, it was true that she lost in an unsightly manner. What good things could Chen Guo think of to say? At this moment, Yi Shu opened his mouth to speak. He only spoke 5 words, keep practicing. So heartless. Wei Chen nearly failed to restrain himself from reprimanding. The gloomy expression of a beauty losing a match was rather heartbreaking. You ***, is that how you comfort people? Before Wei Chen could ridicule, Tang Ru already made her response. Her reply was very simple, with only one word. After she spoke, her hands returned to the keyboard and mouse. Chen Guo already turned to her side, preparing to comfort her, but she saw Tang Ru log out of the match. Chen Guo was startled. What are you planning to do? Practice. Chen Guo was between laughter and tears. If she didn't really know Tang Ru, she would have thought Tang Ru was angry at Yi Shu's blunt, keep practicing, and was peeved to do it. The match isn't finished yet, Chen Guo said. We have to win. Tang Ru rose her hand and called out loud. You don't say, Yi Shu replied concisely. The second to enter the match for Team Happy was Chao Yifan with his 1-inch ash. His character was already standing on the match's seat. Tang Ru had left behind a full health opponent for him, so he felt a bit pressured. However, after hearing the blunt and simple conversation between Tang Ru and Yi Shu, who had yet to play his round, it was as if he gained courage again. The second round of the group arena soon began. Chao Yifan, 1-inch ash. Since Chang Xian's interview had yet to appear in the papers, aside from Team Excellent Era, no one knew that 1-inch ash was played by Chao Yifan, who had been a part of the pro circle. In addition, he barely came out to fight before, so in the first match, Team Everlasting had little to no information about 1-inch ash. They only knew that this character completed Heavenly Challenge and entered Heavenly Domain at level 55. Judging from this point, this person shouldn't have started from the new server. After the first match of the competition, Team Everlasting only had one conclusion towards Chao Yifan: deceitful, very deceitful. How should they face deceitful players? They would naturally have to be careful, very careful. Through their analysis, Team Everlasting came out with a beneficial point. 1-inch ash was a Phantom Demon. Phantom Demon and Sword Demon's style was completely different, so their basics were something that could be told just by seeing. Phantom Demon would lean towards the team's support, so their fighting strength in duels was slightly weak. As for this point, it immediately became an important part in dealing with 1-inch ash. All these were what they knew that were relevant. The Warlock player from Team Everlasting, who defeated Tang Ru just then, was in a stage where his confidence was surging. When he saw 1-inch ash coming out, he silently revised in his mind about this player's character and characteristics. He already came up with a plan in mind. They weren't able to predict every opponent they were up against beforehand, so they needed to prepare in advance for any possibility of every encounter. Whether it was dealing with Soft Mist, 1-inch ash, or even Windward Formation and Lord Grimm. Throughout the week, every player in Team Everlasting already analyzed and discussed about how they should respond. Their preparation for this round was truly adequate. 3, 2, 1. After the countdown, the match started. The map was still Red Flower Pavilion. Both players controlled classes of the Dark Powers, Ghost Blade and Warlock. Although both were closing on towards the map's center, Chao Yifan wasn't as simple and straightforward like Tang Ru. 1-inch ash already started to use any possible covers on the map to his advantage. In the eyes of Team Everlasting players, this was being deceitful. Chao Yifan wasn't proactive in getting closer to his opponent, so the Warlock player of Team Everlasting also didn't come up proactively. Were they kidding? The sharpshooter of Team Everlasting in the first round fell into 1-inch ash's trap because he was too proactive. How could they make the same mistake twice? In reality, such traps would be ineffective for teams made up of normal players. There were too many normal players who lacked integrity. There were no supervisors online. It was very likely that they would be using the bird's eye view to warn and call out for one another. However, Team Everlasting was strictly following the rules. Until now, the only exception was when Heian was fighting in the group arena, someone wasn't able to refrain and called out once. As for this incident, after that round, no one brought it up again. Team Everlasting ended with their loss in that round, so if they really won, that cry of warning would make them win with an unfair advantage. Even if they were happy about their victory, there would be a shadow in their minds. Even though the second round of the match was a matter of life and death, from the single matches till now, Team Everlasting didn't do anything that violated the rules. They only earnestly prepared for a whole week and never thought about using any cheating methods to help them get through that difficult stage. 1-Inch Ash and Leopold haven't confronted for a long time, even the audience found it difficult to restrain themselves. Those who were nervous at this point were mostly the spectators. The bird's eye view was able to let them clearly grasp onto both sides' activity. Both sides' various ways of walking and positioning was twisting and turning, so they never encountered. Finally, Leopold quietly turned to 1-Inch Ash's side. 1-Inch Ash was already exposed within Leopold's area that could cast spells. Get rid of him, many spammed in the spectators' chat. Chapter 837. Having the upper hand. Was it close enough? Team Everlasting's Warlock player was more nervous than anyone right now, because according to their research, 1-Inch Ash was a very cunning person. He had successfully managed to close in on his opponent's side, but could it be trap? Leopold didn't continue to close in or start to cast. Team Everlasting's Warlock wanted to observe a little more, but Red Flower Pavilion didn't give much cover. 1-Inch Ash turned suddenly and Leopold had nowhere to hide, becoming fully exposed in the other range of vision. The spectating members of Team Everlasting all let out sighs of regret. They could clearly see, from their omniscient view, that 1-Inch Ash hadn't been laying a trap and Leopold had really stumbled on a great opportunity to take the upper hand. However, he was overly cautious, so he missed it. Upon turning his body, 1-Inch Ash immediately noticed Leopold was at his flank and hurriedly started to move away. Directly charging at a ranged character wasn't a good idea, especially ones like Warlocks that had powerful control skills. His chance was gone. Seeing 1-Inch Ash's hurried retreat, Everlasting's Warlock knew he had missed his chance at grabbing the initiative and was very frustrated. But he had to be cautious. He then recalled the important points that were repeated brought up on the tactical notes for 1-Inch Ash. So, he started to wonder again, was this retreat the next step in some scheme? So, not only did Team Everlasting's Warlock not pursue him immediately, he even changed direction and took a longer route to close in on 1-Inch Ash. The spectating members of Everlasting exchanged looks. They could tell that Leopold was being a little too cautious this round. With this attitude, he would become overly suspicious of his opponent's actions. After a while of cautious movement from both sides, their paths crossed once more. Under the dancing petals of the Red Flower Pavilion, the two characters, both in control of the powers of darkness, noticed that they had somehow come into such proximity with a single turn of the head. This competition had already been going on for 8 whole minutes. The audience was exhausted to the point where they didn't even have the energy to cheer any longer. Team Everlasting's Warlock was being extremely cautious, but Chao Yifan was the same. However, Chao Yifan's caution was reasonable. It was better to be close when against a dangerous class like the Warlock. It could be seen from the delight Wei Chen had towards Death's Hand, which had a cast range bonus of +4, that the increase in this range meant a lot to a Warlock. Under this background, it wasn't as if they hadn't come across each other before. It was just that they both didn't think it was a good opportunity and retreated. So, they had traversed the terrain through their own paths for a whole 8 minutes. This meeting was coincidental. For the audience, it was even kind of funny, like two people backing up to look for each other, only to back into each other. Of course, what actually happened wasn't so absurd. But they were surprised to notice the other, and at such a close distance too. A chance. A trap. That was what each of the players immediately thought. At such proximity, Chao Yifan definitely had the advantage. His cautious movements were simply to find a chance to close in on the other. Now that it had happened out of coincidence, why would he wait instead of taking this chance? As for Team Everlasting's Warlock, he had no idea that Chao Yifan was just as surprised as he was. As soon as he saw that the situation gave the other the upper hand, he immediately believed he had fallen for the other's trap. Was his 8 minutes of careful circling useless? The Warlock couldn't help but freak out a little. He didn't even know when he had started singing the other's tune. 1-Inch Ash was already charging over. Moonlight Slash. A graceful arc of light sped out in a 216 degrees curve. The dark phantom power was already heading straight at Leopold. Although Team Everlasting's Warlock was anxious, his hands didn't slow, hurriedly sidestepping the attack. A full Moonlight Slash after the Moonlight Slash was a combination both Sword Demons and Phantom Demons were familiar with using. The current 1-inch Ash was no exception, apart from how the 360 degrees attack came out at an angle instead of parallel to the ground like with normal players. This was using one's mechanics to change the angle of the attack. This execution had its own fan-given name, Slanted Moonlight Slash. The name was just a nickname made up by players. The damage and other effects of the skill had no change. However, with this slant, the angle of attack would be changed. Leopold may have dodged Moonlight Slash, but he was struck full by the full Moonlight Slash. Full Moonlight Slash also had a blow-away effect. Leopold was blasted back as the attack landed. On the other side, 1-inch Ash raised his sword towards the sky and a purple light flashed. The sky above the sword tip seemed to rip open, and continuous thudding sounds rang out. Several tombstones of varying lengths and heights had fallen from the heavens in this Ghostblade skill, Death's Tombstone. This skill was purely a damage-dealing skill, but if you were hit by these tombstones, you would be briefly stunned. This was something all attacks did. The current Leopold was still soaring through the air. How could he possibly dodge the falling tombstones? He was quickly smashed to the ground by a falling tombstone. In the current situation, Death's Tombstone's situation control was greater than its damage. After the tombstone that knocked Leopold to the ground, more were still falling. This skill would continue for a while. The knockdown Leopold couldn't dodge out of range. Then came a performance of setting boundaries. He kept chanting, so by the time Death's Tombstones had ended, 1-inch Ash had sent out 2 ghost boundaries already. Ice Boundary, which did the best in limiting movement, was obviously set. The other boundary was a Plague Boundary, which reduced the defense of the victims inside it. Leopold was first slowed by the shards of ice that clung to him from the Ice Boundary. Then, the Plague Boundary reduced his defense. Characters that were affected by Plague Boundary took on a hunched-over and frail look, struggling to move out of the boundary. It was then that the third Ghost Boundary fell. Sword Boundary. Something that enhanced the strength and intelligence of characters on one's own side. Strength and intelligence were 2 stats that directly influenced damage output. With his opponent slowed and their defense weakened, while his own character had a boost in strength and intelligence, it was the perfect time to strike for a Ghostblade. Without hesitation, 1-inch Ash's blade fell towards Leopold. Leopold had no chance of fighting back with the Ghost Boundaries. Even if they weren't there, the level 55 1-inch Ash had once made things very difficult for the level 70 Windward formation. Warlocks really weren't good at close combat. The power of the Phantom Ghost swirled around the blade that continuously flashed and hacked away at Leopold's life. The 3 boundaries disappeared one after the other, but new boundaries were already there to take their place. When the Ice Boundary disappeared, a Flame Boundary was set. When the Plague Boundary vanished, an Ash Boundary appeared. The Ash Boundary was a very interesting ghost boundary. A character under the effects of an Ash Boundary would have the weight of all the objects on them increased in proportion to the level of the Ash Boundary. A full-leveled Ash Boundary could double the weight on a character. As the weight a character had to carry increased, the direct effects included reducing a character's jumping power and movement speed. The effects on attack speed wasn't very important to normal players, but at a pro level, not paying attention to these changes and effects could result in losing the match. Team Everlasting's Warlock didn't have the time to calculate this. Having been closed in on by 1-inch Ash, he was struggling with or without the Ghost Boundaries. In the first 8 minutes, both had been cautiously moving about. They would even part after seeing each other. Yet, this wave of attacks had brought Leopold's health down, all the way to half in a minute. As for 1-inch Ash, Leopold didn't have the chance to counter. He had just won a flawless victory against Soft Mist, yet now it seemed he was going to be flawlessly beaten by 1-inch Ash. Team Everlasting's Warlock was definitely displeased. They had managed to make it 3 versus 2, but having the opponent so easily close this gap wasn't something they could accept. Thinking of this, he suddenly realized something. That's right. This was a group arena. Though it was a one-on-one match, there was an element of teamwork to it, too. He could lose this match, but he had to try his best to create an advantage for his teammates first. Victory didn't require the first match to be won, but definitely required the first player to do their best. Maybe he should have been a little more brave in the beginning? Team Everlasting's Warlock was a little frustrated. With a 3 vs 2 advantage, there had been no need for him to play it so safe. If he had taken the initiative, then maybe the situation would be different. There might still be a chance, if he tried his best now. Team Everlasting's Warlock suddenly calmed, while Chow Yifan's performance was, naturally, not to the point where he could mount an offense completely without openings. Soon, Team Everlasting's Warlock managed to grasp the moment between two attacks. He rolled to dodge the strike and immediately began to cast. Before, he probably would have thought his proximity was too risky, but now his attitude had changed. He had to deal as much damage as possible to give his remaining teammates the best advantage. Soul Slice. After that instant cast skill, curse arrows were fired without any charging. Soul Strike, Decaying Curse, Control Curse. Offensive and control skills were cast by Leopold indiscriminately. Team Everlasting's Warlock immediately found that feeling he had in the last match, getting better and smoother as he attacked. Having taken that small opening, he instantly counterattacked. Chapter 838. Apologies are unnecessary. The sudden wave of counterattacks caught Chow Yifan off guard. Although he had been a part of the Pro League for a year, he hadn't had any real battle experience there. He had seen a lot in the Pro League, but he barely had any true experience. With his abilities as a foundation, normal players didn't stand a chance, but Team Everlasting's players weren't so easy to deal with. This opening wasn't something that a normal player could take advantage of. In the end, what Chow Yifan lacked was battle experience from this sort of high-end match. Even in team matches, letting him practice against the members of a champion-level team like Tiny Herb. Yet, practice was still very different from a real match. Chow Yifan became anxious and hasty after his opponent got the better of him. On the other side, Team Everlasting's Warlock was doing better and better. He had originally been closed in on by 1-inch Ash, but now he was pulling apart their distance as he attacked. But this time, Team Everlasting's Warlock no longer retreated to an overly cautious distance. After coming to a fair distance away, he stopped moving back. If he stayed relatively close, his attacks would be harder to dodge. Team Everlasting's Warlock decided to keep the initiative in his own hands, furiously attacking and discarding the caution the tactical notes said he should have when dealing with 1-inch Ash. On the field, tactics and strategy were important, but sometimes it was better if a player did what they felt was right. That was what Team Everlasting's Warlock was doing right now. He was using his own judgment to create a critical turning point to the match. On the other hand, Chow Yifan was unable to steady himself after having the tables turned against him. The more he wanted to take back the upper hand, the more his performance slipped. Of course, the public chat channel had become extremely active by now. When Leopold was being suppressed by 1-inch Ash, no one spoke, but now that the situation had turned, those clenched fists could finally start waving. Leopold received waves upon waves of encouragement. Even though the players on the field couldn't see it, the audience could tell that Leopold was linking his moves more and more smoothly, while 1-inch Ash's actions were becoming mechanical, unable to keep up with the pace. Originally, the audience had the same attitude as Team Everlasting's Warlock. He didn't need to win this match, but he at least needed to deal some damage so that the next players could use the advantage. Yet now it seemed that he could use this counterattack to completely wipe out 1-inch Ash. Chow Yifan had also thought of this. If he lost, then that would mean his opponent had wiped out 2 people, bringing the situation to a 1 vs 3 match. This situation would be the reverse of what had happened in the last round. And in the last round, the one who smiled to the end was happy with their 3-1 advantage. He couldn't let that happen. Chow Yifan became anxious, but he didn't have enough experience to calm his emotions. His performance was slipping. Instantly, Leopold caught another opening and brought on another wave of attacks. What was even worse was that this opening left him exposed to the Warlock's control skill. To escape this sort of control, he had to sacrifice a lot, and the cost was something 1-inch Ash couldn't afford. He lost. 1-inch Ash fell. Under extremely favorable circumstances, his opponent had taken a chance to unleash a wave of counterattacks, catching Chow Yifan off guard and messing up his pace. He never managed to turn the tides again. 2 of Team Happy's players had already been defeated. As for Team Everlasting, Warlock Leopold still had a third of his health remaining. This advantage was even greater than what Tang Ru had managed last round. sorry. On Happy's side, Chow Yifan stood with an expression of shame and didn't look at anyone as he spoke. He was an inconsequential member of Team Tiny Herb, an errands runner. Apart from to his best friend Gao Yingji, he was a person whose existence didn't matter. Yet, in Team Happy, a team that couldn't compare to Team Tiny Herb, he felt special. This feeling made Chow Yifan wake up smiling, and he was set on not wasting the attention and care everyone gave to him. Unfortunately, he had slipped up in such an important match. After their opponent had gained a flawless victory against Tang Ru, he should have been the one to stabilize the situation since he had more experience than her. Especially under such favorable circumstances, losing the upper hand due to a wave of counterattacks that wiped him out, he couldn't forgive himself and he didn't have the hope that his teammates would either. Apologies are unnecessary. It was then that he heard that voice. At the All-Star weekend, when he was at his lowest, preparing to give up his career as a pro player, it was this voice that rebuilt the foundation of his confidence. Victory is never certain. If you apologize every time you lose, that would be too troublesome, Yi Shu said. Victory was never certain, but losing at such a critical moment, wasn't that a waste of the expectations everyone had in him? I did terribly, Chow Yifan said. Then do better next time, Yi Shu replied. He was very calm and didn't seem to mind at all. This manner often pissed Chen Guo off, but here, it helped the worry in Chow Yifan's heart disperse. Good luck, boss. Steamed Bun suddenly came out of nowhere with that yell. That was when everyone came back to reality. The competition wasn't over, they still had Yi Shu and Lord Grimm. If they could pull off a 1 versus 3. 1 against 3, can you do it? Chen asked bluntly. Haha, Yi Shu laughed. What are you laughing about? Chen Guo was pissed off again. How is it 1 against 3? Yi Shu replied, it's just 1 against 2 and 1/3 at most. Alright then, Chen Guo admitted that she was wrong. Leopold only had 1/3 of his health left. We can do this step by step. As Yi Shu said this, his Lord Grimm had already entered the arena. As for Team Everlasting, they had just finished a round of victorious cheering. Team Everlasting had been like the audience. They hadn't hoped for any sort of victory, only that Leopold could deal as much damage as possible. In the end, Leopold managed to win beautifully, and they were elated. Nicely done. Absolutely wonderful. Between matches, no one would stop the players from communicating. Everyone from Team Everlasting had crowded over with all sorts of praise. Continue to do well. In end, this sort of more serious talk was left to their boss, who had personally come to watch. The third match of the group arena soon began. Unspecialized Lord Grimm and Warlock Leopold entered the map after the countdown. Lord Grimm. This was, without a doubt, the focus of Team Everlasting's preparations. Lord Grimm was rather well known, but unfortunately, recordings of actual matches between him and others were few and far between. In the end, they could only rely on the experience he and, the only one to fight Lord Grimm one-on-one, could share with them. 120 low-end skills were what they had to familiarize themselves with when going against Lord Grimm. Being who they weren't unfamiliar with these skills. They could manage to list them out without thinking if you gave them a piece of paper. However, a character with all 120 skills and all their possible combos was something no one had ever seen. The difference between different classes was mostly shown through the skills. This sort of all-new combination was like an entirely new class in itself. In a single week, was it possible to easily familiarize themselves with and figure out how to deal with a new class? Even without the class, this player. Although the media said that the person who applied with Lord Grimm wasn't Yi Chu, the applicant and the actual player was not necessarily the same person. Violating the rules like this was common in the Challenger League. Yi Chu was from the Pro League, but who was to say he would be willing to scoop as low as this? Who was to say he wouldn't? Team Everlasting didn't dare, so they had to prepare for the worst. If this was before, hearing a name like Yi Chu would probably make their hands cramp up. Now that they were fighting with their backs to the wall, they were all encouraging each other. Those who had willpower promised to topple this god, those who didn't silently use "that's not Yi Chu" to try and delude themselves. They would, of course, exaggerate the flaws Lord Grimm had. Especially his low damage output, which was something clear from when Lord Grimm went up against Tian's Go Forth. So, even if it is Yi Chu, we still have a chance. Don't forget, our goal is to defeat Excellent Era. At times like this, excellent era had to be mentioned. When compared to this powerhouse, Yichu alone seemed brittle. This comparison was something Team Everlasting was used to making and had lots of practice in making in the Pro League. If you perform like you did just now, you won't have to fear even Yichu. This a competition, and Yichu doesn't have certainty for victory. Just as the match started, Everlasting's players gave their Warlock one last round of encouragement and quietly backed away. As for the Warlock, he in an optimal condition. He decided to continue to use the same tactics as the latter half of the last match, actively challenging his opponent. Even if he lost, he had to take out an equal amount of health from his opponent. Bring it on, Lord Grimm. Team Everlasting's Warlock thought to himself, letting Leopold shoot forwards. Soon enough, Team Everlasting's Warlock saw Lord Grimm amongst the dancing red flowers of the map center. Lord Grimm, do your worst. The Warlock player shouted in the chat, feeling his blood pumping and igniting a round of cheers from the audience. Coming, Lord Grimm's reply was simple and brisk, because he planned to let his actions speak for him. 3 anti-tank missiles were already soaring over. Do you think you can hit me from that distance? The Warlock player had Leopold easily sidestep, but following that was the continuous noise of a gun firing. Lord Grimm closed in even as he shot. The fast movement seemed to have no effect on his accuracy. Leopold could only keep dodging, while Lord Grimm attacked as he closed in. Yet, on Team Everlasting's Warlock's face, there was no anxiety, only the hint of a triumphant smile. Chapter 839. To show the wolf into the house. Team Everlasting's Warlock had learned his lesson from the last fight. He wouldn't face this fight with extreme caution. With a huge lead, he decided to be braver. Lord Grimm closed in quickly? Of course. He hadn't put in all of his efforts to stop him. He intentionally let Lord Grimm get near. When his opponent reached a satisfactory distance away, he immediately switched up the tempo to catch him off guard. As for Lord Grimm, he was closing the distance while attacking. To the Warlock, none of that mattered. Even if you weren't attacking me to stop me from escaping, I wasn't going to push you away anyways. Team Everlasting's Warlock closely followed Lord Grimm. Every step forward was another step towards his ideal scenario. That's about right. Finally, the distance between Lord Grimm and Leopold had reached a value that the Warlock was satisfied with. At this distance, he could attack or retreat. When he cast his curses, it wouldn't be easy for his opponent to dodge. Let's start with a bind. The Warlock had been waiting for this moment, so he naturally had a plan in mind. His attack sequence rolled out without much more thought. He tapped a key and waited for his bind to be cast, when he heard a gunshot. Minnesota. The Warlock saw Lord Grimm's gun let out a tongue of flame and cursed to himself. Even though it was just a normal attack, it was timed during his casting, so it would interrupt his bind. Warlock control skills were frightening. As soon as you were hit, you would be in their control for a few seconds. If their cast times were instantaneous, they would be too overpowered. As a result, Warlock curses had cast times or required preparation. At the very least, they wouldn't come out as quickly as Blade Master or Striker skills. Bind had a cast time. Even though the cast time wasn't long, it couldn't be faster than Lord Grimm's bullet. Helpless, the Warlock had Leopold avoid this shot. By moving, his casting would naturally be interrupted. Mobile cast was a special elementalist skill. Warlocks couldn't learn it. Being hit by a bullet would have interrupted the casting as well. Moving would too, but at least he would avoid that bit of damage. Anyone would choose to dodge. After learning his lesson, the Warlock player didn't choose to cast another curse. Curses that didn't require cast times had fairly long starting lag, but they could at least be used while moving. But this time, before he could complete the inputs, a gunshot rang. And this time, it wasn't just one gunshot, but several in a row. Lord Grimm directly let out a Gatling gun. The bullets flew in a straight line. Dodging wouldn't be so easy. How could the Warlock have any time to complete his skill? Dodge, 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 dodge. The Warlock player adjusted Leopold's position, frantically moving his hands to avoid the endless stream of bullets. It put him in a disadvantageous position. His opponent was controlling him too well. It seemed like not a single bullet of Gatling gun's rapid firing was wasted. This level of skill was above even their team captain Wu Chen. The more surprising part hadn't even come yet. When the last bullets of Gatling gun fired, Lord Grim had already switched his umbrella's form and began using another skill. It was a skill that the warlock was incomparably familiar with, Curse Arrow. A ball of dark energy instantly congealed. The warlock couldn't tell if it had been charged or not. From what he could tell, as soon as Gatling gun ended, a curse arrow flew straight towards him. The dark arrow moved slightly slower than the bullets from Gatling gun. However, the arrows seemed to be linked together with the Gatling gun bullets. Even if the warlock player wanted to block it with his own curse arrow, because of the distance between the two sides, he didn't have enough time to cast it. Not good. The warlock player had already realized that the situation wasn't good. This feeling of being unable to deal with incoming attacks because of the distance had been what he had planned to give to Lord Grim. Not now, it seemed to be the other way around. First, Gatling gun. Then, curse arrow. Because of the distance, avoiding them became much more difficult. Retreat first? Or should I avoid them and hurry to counterattack? The warlock player originally had everything planned for, but at this moment, he had to make a choice. The incoming curse arrow wouldn't wait for him though. As soon as the ball of light burst open, the skill could be considered as complete. As the curse arrow flew, Lord Grim didn't slow down and continue to close the distance, following behind that arrow. This isn't good. The warlock player didn't hesitate anymore. He needed to maintain a distance away from Lord Grim. As a result, he dodged, while having his Leopold retreat. Bang! Before the curse arrow was completely released, Lord Grim actually fired a bullet to add to the attack. There was also a bullet alongside the curse arrow. Besides unspecialized, no other class could accomplish this. The warlock had been caught off guard and was hit by the bullet. The attack induced a brief hit stun, causing Leopold to also be hit by the curse arrow. These were low-leveled skills. And because Lord Grim's Myriad Manifestations umbrella had low attack, the damage dealt wasn't actually much, but it still struck a blow to the warlock's confidence. The first fight had progressed smooth like butter, all according to plan. In the following fight, he was like fire and beautifully completed a comeback. In this warlock's glory career, he had played his very best today. His confidence had reached its peak, so even when facing the suspected to be God Yi Chu, he didn't waver or play cautiously. He courageously thought of dealing as much damage as possible to help the players behind him. But now, he was in at a complete disadvantage. He felt as if his hands were tired. His mind was wavering. It was different from his confrontation versus 1-inch Ash. In that match, his Leopold had accidentally gotten close to 1-inch Ash. Being on the disadvantage was normal. But in this match, Lord Grim had come from far away and pushed him into a corner in a very direct manner. Moreover, he was in this situation despite his careful planning and preparation. And now, if he said he intentionally let Lord Grim get closer so he could deal some damage to his opponent, who would believe him? After their distance closed, he was clearly at a disadvantage. His actions were the same as showing a wolf into the house. And now the distance between them was still closing. Shadow clone technique. In the match's public chat, these words suddenly popped up. Despite Lord Grim's tight pace, he unexpectedly had time to type out these words. When these 4 words came out, the warlock jumped up in fright. At their current distance, a shadow clone technique would be able to reach him. Shadow clone technique was an under-level 20 ninja skill, so an unspecialized would definitely have it. The warlock player frantically turned his viewpoint left and right, but all the spectators could clearly see that the instant Leopold turned around, Lord Grim used shadow clone technique. Too despicable. The spectators were having a hard time keeping still. You actually blurted out the name of the skill to bother your opponent. Do you think you're Huang Shaoshan? Even the players in Team Everlasting looked in disapproval. The other side is clearly blurting out the skill name to distract you. You should be paying attention to his movements. You can see when he uses shadow clone technique. What are you looking around for? That was easier said than done though. Leopold had been forced back by Lord Grim's closely linked attacks, so it was hard not to miss something done by Lord Grim. When he suddenly saw Lord Grim suddenly blurt out a skill, he was very worried that the Lord Grim in front of him was a clone. But naturally, when the warlock player discovered that there was no one around him, it happened. Dragon Tooth, Sky Strike, Double Stab, Falling Flower Palm. This battle mage combo was something that Yi Shu could perform with just one finger. But after falling flower palm, he utilized the unspecialized feature. After being hit flying away, Leopold was struck by a sword into the air. A sword wave revolved around him at the center. Spellblade skill, Wave Wheel Slash. After Wave Wheel Slash, the follow-ups continued. 24 classes. 120 base skills flowed out from Lord Grimm's hands, shocking everyone. At this instant, the majority of people had forgotten about the outcome of the fight. A single thought popped up in their minds again and again, F***ck, that can be done too? No player had ever seen such a combo before. Right now, it was being performed by Lord Grimm, making them feel fascinated at the novelty of it. At the same time, they hoped to see what more new tricks could be brought out. This lasted up until Leopold's health bar changed color. Everyone returned to the match. This was a match. Victory and defeat mattered. Leopold's health bar was already red. He only had 1/10 of his health left. He was going to lose. Ah, you can follow up like that. Everyone became distracted again. In comparison, Team Everlasting wasn't like them. After all, they cared about the outcome of this match. The outcome affected their team and their future. No matter how shocking the scene was, it wouldn't erase their concerns. He's lost. Everyone was already certain. After Lord Grimm closed in, he unleashed the frightening continuity of an unspecialized offense. Even though the combo count was sometimes broken according to the system, in the eyes of real players, some of those attacks that weren't recognized by the system were still combos because they couldn't be dodged or blocked due to the situation. These types of false combos were even more terrifying than normal combos. Normal combos could be forcefully interrupted. However, false combos relied on the opponent being unable to react in order to connect the attacks. Chapter 840. Lord Grimm's Flaw. Leopold fell. At this moment, the spectators felt like they had woken up from a dream. Afterwards, they felt incomparably disgusted because they had actually been enamored by the combo performed by a player that they had determined to reject. For the face slappers dedicated to watching Team Happy fall, it was too disloyal. The instant that Team Everlasting's Warlock player saw his Leopold fall, he wasn't too shocked. He was more puzzled. He suddenly felt like that fight seemed unrelated to him, especially once Lord Grimm closed in on him. Leopold was like a sandbag whose purpose was to get pummeled, unable to put up any resistance. He became support for the performer to show off on. When his character fell, he hadn't been able to deal a single bit of damage to Lord Grimm with his third of his health. This 2 1/3 or 3 versus 1 situation looked as if it had been kicked aside easily. The other Team Everlasting players consoled the Warlock. Next up, the two who would be fighting next used this brief break between fights to discuss ideas. The group arena was also fought as a whole. Team Everlasting's second player in the group arena was their Chi Master. Hien and his Spellblade Go Forth would act as Team Everlasting's anchor and trump card for the third fight. After the two players strategized briefly, Hien saw that their Warlock player was still staring into space blankly. He went over and patted his back with a smile. "You've already done a great job." Hien's smile was sincere. The Warlock player was even more at a loss. He was unable to deal any damage to the opponent. How was that a great job? Hien continued a smile. In our current situation, Lord Grimm's biggest issue can be fully utilized. What is it? The Warlock player didn't understand. Mana. Hien's smile began to reveal his confidence. Mana. The Warlock player checked his screen. He had already withdrawn from the group arena. His Leopold could not stand on the competitor spot anymore, which automatically placed him in the spectator view. And here, he could clearly see Lord Grimm on Team Happy's side as well as Lord Grimm's health and mana. Lord Grimm's health was full, but he had used 1/4 of his mana. The Warlock player suddenly realized something. Even though Lord Grimm's skills were low-leveled skills with low mana costs, but because the damage was low as well, if you look at his total mana consumption for a complete fight, he doesn't have it better than any other class. From the data retrieved from our first round and other simulations, the attack power of Lord Grimm's silver weapon should be quite low. Even though he has other stats from his other silver equipment, from an overall perspective, Lord Grimm's attack power is lower than other equipment at his level by 1/3, Hien continued. The Warlock player nodded his head. In their preparation this week, they had included their conclusions on Lord Grimm during their strategizing. When Hien once again emphasized this point, the Warlock player was even more clear about it. Lord Grimm's mana consumption wouldn't be any lower than another class's. In fact, it would be even higher because his low damage output didn't only stem from his low-level skills, but also his weapon's low attack. Low-level skills required less mana. High-level skills required more mana. There was a balance. However, if the weapon had low attack power, more mana would be required to make up for it. The Challenger League's tournament rules were more lax than the Pro League's. Characters could also bring potions, but its usage was limited. Potions could only be used once. Right now, Lord Grimm had used a quarter of his mana against a warlock with only a third of his health left. Even if he drank the best mana potion in the game, it would only restore 20% at most. For the current situation, it probably wouldn't be of much use. Lord Grimm needed to face two more opponents, who would both be at full health. Why did I forget this point? The Warlock player now understood and became annoyed at himself. If I had noticed earlier, I wouldn't have tried to deal as much damage to him and instead tried to waste as much of his mana. All of us forgot too, but it isn't too to realize it now, Heian smiled. The reason that they hadn't thought about this point before the group arena was because they didn't think they'd be able to get such a huge lead. After all, even if Lord Grimm consumed more mana than other classes, with the help of a mana potion, he had more than enough mana to last against an opponent with a sliver of health and an opponent at full health. Most group arenas were won by just a hair. Let alone a 1v3, a 2v3 was already very rare in the pro scene. Team Everlasting had admittedly prepared well for this match, but don't forget that they had almost been 1v3'd by Team Happy, so they didn't have the confidence to believe that they would be able to obtain such a huge lead. As a result, not too much importance had been placed on Lord Grimm's mana issues. It was only until their Warlock player 1v2'd and started fighting against Lord Grimm did Heian suddenly remember. The fight had already started though. He obviously wasn't so lacking in competitive integrity that he would remind the Warlock player. In his eyes, Lord Grimm didn't have enough mana to deal with two full health characters. However much mana Leopold could force him to waste would be fine. In the end, Lord Grimm had lost a quarter of his mana. It was equivalent to him using up his potion. It was already quite a good result, which was why Heian smiled so confidently. The Chi Master went onto the stage and walked to the competitor spot. He had already talked with Heian before. For this fight, his goal wouldn't be to win, but to drag this fight with Lord Grimm for as long as possible and waste as much of his mana as he could. Of course, if he could deal some damage to Lord Grimm, that would be even better. The group arena's fourth round began. As soon as the match started, the Chi Master Heavenly Rage went on the attack. The reason was because every class would automatically recover health and mana slowly over time. Of course, during the brief respite between group arena rounds, the status effects on characters would be reset and the character's stats would be locked. No recovery would occur. But as soon as the match started, the automatic recovery would immediately begin to take effect. Heian was a very careful person. When he talked with the Chi Master, he wasn't willing to neglect even this small matter. In reality, the automatic recovery was extremely slow. Relying on that recovery rate wouldn't be enough to last a fight. However, Heian was afraid that their opponent would be despicable enough and refuse to fight, so he could rely on his automatic recovery for an hour or two to recover his mana back to full. Heavenly Rage charged forward. Heian immediately checked on Lord Grimm through his spectator view. He discovered that Lord Grimm was also running forward to face him head-on. Lord Grimm didn't seem to have any intentions on using such a despicable strategy. He heaved a sigh of relief. Once the match began, he wouldn't give the Chi Master any reminders. He could only quietly watch the match. In terms of range, Chi Masters only had a few mid-ranged attacks. They weren't like gunners, who thoroughly relied on their long range. As a result, when he and Lord Grimm encountered each other, the first person to initiate should be Lord Grimm. If this was in the past, the Chi Master would have felt troubled fighting such an opponent, but at this moment, the Chi Master was happy. Attacks from far away weren't easy to hit. If Lord Grimm really started attacking from as far away as possible, he might as well not advance and pretend like he couldn't approach, so Lord Grimm would waste more mana. The Chi Master quietly made his decision. Gradually, he saw Lord Grimm's figure. He approached and sure enough, Lord Grimm started attacking from far away. But the Chi Master wasn't excited at all. Bang! Bang bang! Bang bang! Gunshots continued to fire, but there was never more than two in a row. Lord Grimm was just using normal attacks, and normal attacks didn't consume mana. The Chi Master pretended to have his Heavenly Rage dodge, but Lord Grimm continued to bang 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 with normal attacks. F***CK, are you hunting a rabbit? The Chi Master was somewhat angry. Lord Grimm's gun was clearly a rifle, which could fire 2 times in a row. Lord Grimm was standing there leisurely at a distance. He would constantly lift his rifle and then put it down. From time to time, he would fire twice for fun. It looked like he was out hunting. Wouldn't dragging it out like this be the same as letting him recover mana? The Chi Master saw that his plan wasn't working out. He might need to continue approaching. However, if he did it half-heartedly, as long as Lord Grimm mixed in a few skills with his attacks, he could definitely pretend like he was having trouble getting closer. As a result, Heavenly Rage charged forward half-heartedly. Lord Grimm didn't continue hunting and also rushed forward. Skills. Use your skills. The Chi Master repeatedly prayed. At this distance, Lord Grimm should have plenty of skills to choose from. Under this warped mentality, the distance between the two sides became shorter and shorter all the way until even the spectators were dumbfounded. F***CK, Heavenly Rage, are you stupid? You're at this distance already. Why aren't you attacking? Are you planning on fighting Lord Grimm at such a close range? Chi Masters had some close-ranged ability, but it wasn't too outstanding. But for Lord Grimm, he had a few long-ranged moves, but when he decimated Leopold from before, everyone could see how terrifying unspecialized characters were at close range. And now, this Heavenly Rage could already attack from mid-range, but he was still swaying around like he was waiting to take a beating. This guy, had Team Happy bribed him?